I start to hear characters talking to me, and then sometimes it's a little bit like taking down dictation. That's the fun part. But then I wind up with all these scenes that aren't really connected. And by the time I get through that first draft, at the end of the story, I never know how the story is going to end. Then I'm like, oh, this is what the book is about. And then I actually love revision. I used to hate it when I was younger. But I think about revision the way I think about athletics, sports. You start with a body that's kind of in whatever shape your body's in. But if you are disciplined and consistently do push-ups or run a little bit or swim or do some kind of physical exercise, you get stronger. It gets better. And that feeling of improvement is amazing. It's just like, yeah, right? And that's what revision feels like. Because revision, you're taking this mess that's just like, good idea, but yeah, and you're making it better. And it often it drives my editors crazy, because the book that I have coming out in January, some of you guys maybe have read that, my editors wanted to publish that 2 drafts ago. They thought it was ready months ago, and I said, no, it's not, because I knew that it wasn't strong enough. So the revision process to me is the most interesting and also the most misunderstood part about writing. If you Google my name and you go to my website, on my website is my blog, and I do a lot of talking. I did back in September, for a couple of weeks, I was talking almost daily about the revision process. So there's a lot of tips in there that you can find. Yes?
Do you ever, give up on your books?
Yeah, because, and usually, I probably have about 6 books on a file on my computer that I started and just didn't have it. Part of it's often because of where my life was at that point. Like usually I just finished a book and then I started another one too fast. I needed to give myself some space. I should have gone out and relaxed a little bit. And sometimes it's just that it wasn't a great idea, and that's okay. Because even if I didn't publish that book, the writing of those several hundred pages made me a slightly better writer, I'd like to think. Yes?
How much of yourself do you put, or should you put, in your writing?
I think you should put what you're comfortable with. And sometimes, depending on the story, that will change. Often what happens is I'll say to myself, oh, I'm not going to put anything of my life into this book, and then it winds up in there, and you can't help but put your own truths in there. What you'll see most often is that your emotional truth will come out. Like in my new book, my relationship with my dad when he was drinking, I pulled a lot of what that felt like. That book is not me, it's not my dad, it's not even our lives, but what it felt like to come in the door and know that there's a really good chance that your dad was drunk and you'd have to deal with it, and just that feeling I borrowed and then put into the character. Yes?
What helps you choose the character's name?
That's a great question, because it's really hard to write unless you know what their name is. When my kids were younger, they were on every single sports team in the whole world, so I used to keep the rosters, and then I would pick one name from one team and one name and the last name from another team sometimes. I have found that it's often, just because it can be boring sometimes to write, so I'll often choose names that have, if you want to look deeper, a little bit more meaning.